Hello everyone, myself Arma Sahar. I am pursuing my computer science engineering from cs.code.in, and as I am in my learning era, I would like to explore the topics of computer science and share it with you all. I hope you are going to enjoy the video. In this video, we are going to talk about Linux, how this came into existence. But before we move on to Linux, what is Linux? Linux is an operating system. We have often heard about different operating systems like MS-DOS, Mac, or Linux or Unix. There are a lot of operating systems that we often hear about. But why do we as programmers, as computer science engineers or software engineers, often use Linux only? Why? Why Linux? So to research about why Linux, we have to take a step back and understand what happened before Linux. And we have to take another step back. Linux is an operating system. So what were different operating systems before Linux? And what is an operating system should be our first motive to understand Linux better. What was the first operating system? How was it invented? Okay, so we are just starting from what is the first operating system and how was it invented. So we will start with the era before operating systems. What happened? How was operating system invented, and why was it invented? Do you remember we are often heard of in the year when computers were new, when computers were invented, they were no less than a size of a room. It will be fit only in a room, and there was no screen as such, no screen, no keyboard. The keyboard was very different. No tools or mouse that we could use. But how did people used to write in the computer? This is a computer. How did people used to write in the computer? So people used to write the program on punch cards. They used to go, so the programmers used to write on this punch cards, write the programs on these punch cards, and go into those rooms where computers were kept in, and there were few people who used to work on the computers, technically the lab guys who used to type on the computers as per the given punch cards, and you have to wait for the entire day to get this program written in the computer because the computer are very slow and the computers used to take a lot of time to process a program. And if at all there was one single typo in your punch card or one single wrong hole, then the whole program would crash and burn. You would always get this printout as if try again. And you have to start the process again. It was literally very inefficient because we have to wait for the whole day. Maybe if we used to give it in the morning, then we have to come back in lunch, or maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. The smartest minds of that generation were being turned into kind of delivery boys for punch cards. They used to write the program and deliver the punch cards to lab technicians, and they have to wait for the entire day to see if the program that they have written is working or not. And this was very frustrating. And this frustration got some engineers at General Motors. General Motors is a company again. In the year 1956, they were so fed up from the messy algorithm of working of the computer that they decided to build something better than the existing computers. Then they created what now we call as the operating system. This was created for IBM 704. They didn't even bother giving it a cool name. They just named this operating system as GM-NAA, input and output. But whatever they did was revolutionary, because if they wouldn't have invented the operating system back then I don't know how long the process of giving the punch cards and running any algorithm, running any program would have continued. No more human operators fumbling around with tapes switches between every single day. It was like finally getting a coffee from a coffee machine instead of a person having to brew the coffee beans. and boil water by hand every morning. Let's move on to what exactly is this operating system. Okay, so first let's understand what is operating system in our using our daily life example. Let's take an example of a restaurant kitchen maybe. In restaurant kitchen, there would always be a manager who manages the chef, the preparations of dishes, and the storage of ingredients. This manager makes sure the chef is running, the preparations of the dishes are happening, and there is a storage of ingredients, whatever the dishes are supposed to be made. There is no chaos. There will of course be a chaos. That's a different story. But the manager makes sure these all are running in the sync. If we have to compare this to our real-time computer, then the manager is nothing but an operating system. The chef is nothing but our processor or our CPU, and preparation is our memory, and storage of ingredients is nothing but the storage. I mean the system storage. Right? Pretty relatable, right? All these different orders coming in your program, the manager makes sure everyone knows what to do, when to do, and no one is clashing and nothing is clashing in between each other. And without operating system, you would have complete chaos, like we used to had it before in the early era before operating system came into existence. So there would be complete chaos of no one to manage memory or save files or run multiple programs. This would have been the chaos without the operating system. But now that the operating system came into picture, now we could manage memory, we could run multiple programs, we could save files, we could do multiple things at once with the use of operating system. But before we directly jump onto Linux, we have to see uh, how was Linux invented. So let's have a brief history of Linux. So as we have seen, operating systems were invented and people started using operating systems. Operating systems were everywhere now. The real problem was not yet solved. They were still complicated. A program written for an IBM computer couldn't run on a different computer. It was if it was written for specifically IBM computer, it wouldn't have run on any other computer. So there was this research laboratory which was called as Bell Laboratory. Many of the researchers were working there, and few of them was Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie. These two guys thought about this whole situation, about the program written on IBM will not work on any other computer. They thought this whole situation was stupid, and they went on to build something clean, simple, and that would work on different machines. So they created something called as Unix. Unix was not any other operating system. It was a whole new way of thinking about computers. Like it was a literally new invention in the history of computers. So let's learn about Unix first, because there are a lot of concepts that are taken as it is in the functionality of Linux as well. So we have to understand what Unix is, and we can move ahead to Linux later. So these guys, Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie, were the main guys who thought the situation of IBM computer and the program running on an IBM computer couldn't run on a different computer. It was a stupid situation. So they wanted to build something neat and clean, which is very simple and that would work on different machines. So they created Unix. Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie came with an idea which was very simple, and it was such a beautiful idea that no one could think of. The idea behind Unix that they invented was everything is a file. So what do you mean by everything is a file? Your keyboard, it's a file. Your printer, it's a file. Your mouse, it's a file. A program that you want to run, it is still a file. This made everything work the same way. This ideology made everything work the same way. Isn't it beautiful and very simple? They also believed, so now they also believed in making small programs that did one job well. Then you could connect these small tools together to do incredible complex jobs. Making small programs so that we could connect all the small programs and focus on complex jobs. Do you know in which language Unix is written in? It is written in C language. Again, C language was invented by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Labs. This was the game changer because it was written in C. Unix wasn't stuck on one type of computer anymore. For the first time ever, you could take an operating system and move it to completely different hardware. It was and because writing in C language made Unix portable enough so that you can move it to different hardwares. Here's when things got more interesting. When AT&T owned Bell Labs. So what they did was, so what these people did was they did not had so they had a legal restriction where they cannot sell softwares commercially. So what did they do? So they gave the source code of Unix to universities and research labs. What this one single step did was never happened in history. This step created a community of people who are working on the same thing, sharing their work freely. Students would stay up all the night. Students would stay up all the night reading Unix source code, figuring out how it worked and making it even better than it was. Then sharing those improvements with others as well. It was like having a collaborative workshop where everyone was teaching each other, where everyone was learning with each other. Collaboration was at its best. But this collaboration was in community of people. But here comes a twist. When everything was working fine, people were enjoying the code of Unix and they were literally building around a lot of things and collaborating at it, and collaboration was at its peak. It was around 1984 where a twist had to come into picture. That was when the government broke AT&T's monopoly, which means AT&T could get into the computer business. Now they thought of the precious thing that they have invented ever was Unix, and people are loving it. Now that people are loving it, we can own it back, we can have license on it, we can charge from it so that people could pay us. What they did, they overnight the rules changed. Overnight the rules for Unix changed completely. The source code, which was free for years, now got paid software. Now it became a paid software. It had licensing fees. The cost went from tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of dollars. All the students, researchers who had spent years improving Unix, they were suddenly locked out of their own work. Like literally, they couldn't even access their own work. So as they were not able to access their own work, people were literally devastated. This wasn't just about money or access. It felt like it was a pure betrayal for all the researchers and the students. Because Unix had represented this ideal shared knowledge and collaboration, suddenly it became just another corporate product that most people couldn't afford it. There were a lot of people who had poured their nights and weekends into making Unix better and better each day. There were a lot of people who had built their careers around it. So around 1983, the Richard Stallman, who was a programmer from MIT's AI lab, he saw the shift to proprietary software not as a business move but as a moral failing. He believed that software should be free. Free as in not necessarily the cost, but free as in the freedom of use. What does the freedom of use mean? That means they could customize it, change it, modify it according to their own needs, improvise it according to their own needs. In 1983, he launched a project called GNU. This is pronounced as GNU. I don't know, there are a lot of pronunciations for this, but GNU stands for GNU is not Unix. So the intent for this project was to build a complete operating system from scratch that was not Unix compatible, but would be free forever. Now that Richard Stallman, who built this? Richard Stallman. In 1983. Now that he launched this project, people had different opinions. Many saw Richard as a visionary person, whereas the project also had a lot of pros. The quality of GNU was phenomenal. They successfully rewrote nearly every part of Unix-like operating system. So they launched different things in this operating system, like the command line, the command shell, a compiler, text editor, and many more tools. I mean, these were a lot of tools. They launched a lot of tools that we could use in our day-to-day life. But they missed one thing. They had built everything except the most difficult part, and that was kernel. And that was kernel. They did not. By the start of 1990s, the GNU's operating system was a beautiful machine, but with no engine. The GNU was working very fine. It was booming in the market, but as it had no engine, this sets the stage for the final hero. In 1991, so here comes in 1991, in Helsinki, a 21-year-old student named Linus Torvalds Linus Torvalds bought his first PC. He wasn't satisfied with his existing with the existing operating systems. He was a pure programmer. He did not like the idea of Richard Stallman's GNU. He had a simple desire. He literally had a simple desire. He just wanted a Unix like operating system which could run on his computer, and he thought that it would be a fun project to work on Linux, to work on kernel himself. He wasn't trying to change the world. He called it a hobby project. The proof that he called it as a hobby project is available on internet. Let's just check it out. What did he say to the world before he launched his hobby project? Yes. So this was the message from Linus Torvalds. He told that, hey, everybody out there using Linux, I am doing a free operating system, just a hobby, won't be a big professional like GNU for 386, 486, 80 clones. This has been brewing since April and is starting to get ready. I'd like any feedback on things people like or dislike in Linux, as my OS resembles it somewhat, as same physical layout of the file system due to practical reasons, among other things. I have currently ported Bash and GCC. Things seem to work. This implies that I'll get something practical within a few months, and I'd like to know what features most people want. Any suggestions are welcome, but I won't promise I'll implement them. So this was his message to the world on Newsnet. I guess this was his message to the world, that it was just a hobby project. He clearly said that it wouldn't be as big and professional as GNU is. And then he launched his project and named his kernel as Linux. As his main aim was to build a operating system with kernel, he named it as Linux. What he did was he launched Linux under GNU's license, general public license. Suddenly the community had what it was missing: the powerful and almost complete operating system which found its engine. The Linux kernel was very pragmatic and efficient, and it was perfect fit for the programmers which had all the tools in it. They snapped together like they were made for each other. The results were free open source operating system. Linux is at points often Linux is often called as GNU or Linux, because this was the collaboration between the kernel and GNU's existing operating system under the general public license of GNU. Linux is everywhere. I mean, the phone that you're using, if it is Android, the kernel in the Android is Linux kernel. That's literally 50 to 60% of the world's market is using Android right now. And when you search on Google, or when you watch a movie on Netflix, or let's say you are scrolling the reels on Instagram, you are still communicating with the servers. And those servers are nothing but the very foundation of the cloud that run on Linux. And those servers run on Linux. A lot of things, not just the servers or not just the phones that you're using. There are a lot of things like your Wi-Fi router, your TV. There are a lot of things that run on Linux. So Linux is not going to die anytime soon. Obviously, there will be a lot of improvisations, and the main reason why programmers or developers or any cybersecurity enthusiast or anyone who is into the space of technology, they use Linux because it helps us to understand how computers work. It directly interacts with the hardware of the computer. It directly interacts with the hardware. And I think it is customizable. It can be modified as per our needs. And there are a lot of tools that we can download within seconds to use data science, to use cybersecurity, to use artificial intelligence or system programming. Anything can be used using Linux. And there are a lot of reasons. There are endless reasons to use Linux. It's not that we can end it right here, but there are a lot of reasons why we should use Linux. But the most important reason is that it directly interacts with hardware. It can be modified as per our needs, and the tools that Linux provides us and it literally gives us efficiency. In the next video, we are going to see why do programmers use Linux and how does a kernel interacts with hardware, and we are going to set our own Linux environments to operate our computers using Linux commands. Thank you for watching.